My name is Andrew Knight and I'm a veterinary professor of animal welfare. A long time ago, when I was still a young man in Perth, Western Australia, I worked as an IT technician for the Kuwait Foreign Petroleum Exploration Company. It was 1990 and Kuwait had just been invaded by Iraq, fully occupying the country within 2 days. Several months later, I found a little black book lying on an office coffee table describing the human rights violations that had occurred in Kuwait. I read it over lunch. I was shocked to read about the detention of thousands of civilians in a giant football stadium and about widespread extrajudicial killings and summary executions, rape and torture of people who resisted the invaders. In my short life, I'd never read anything like it. I was appalled and resolved to do something about it. And so I turned up at our local office of Amnesty International shortly after and started volunteering, working on their human rights campaigns on behalf of victims of such human rights violations internationally. I found this incredibly rewarding, and so I branched out, volunteering with our city's Red Cross Soup Patrol, driving around the streets of Perth by night, delivering hot soup and bread to the city's homeless. I got involved in the international campaign to ban landmines and to increase Australia's foreign aid budget, and gained some experience visiting and lobbying legislators. And it felt really rewarding to be able to work on issues affecting people who really profoundly needed the help. However, thinking further, I realised that the numbers of animals severely and adversely affected by human actions was unfortunately millions of times greater, and yet their capacity to suffer is not millions of times less. And so, while I continued to support human rights campaigns, my main focus switched to animal advocacy. Just within the global food system alone, we slaughter over 75 billion land animals annually, and we kill 1 to 3 trillion fish. The land animals alone are 10 times the human population of this planet. And over 90% of all of these animals are intensively farmed, crowded together with very little space, in barren environments with minimal environmental enrichment or opportunities to exercise their deep-seated behavioural needs. This is chronically stressful, and indeed it is cruel to confine sentient creatures in such conditions long term. Both intensively and extensively farmed animals are subjected to a range of surgical mutilations, such as castration, beak trimming and dehorning, usually without painkillers as it's slightly cheaper not to provide them. And nearly all of these animals are then killed at a very premature stage of life. Globally, we used over 190 million laboratory animals in 2015, and since then numbers have been increasing. There are probably well over 200 million used today. Like intensively farmed animals, the vast majority are confined within small, barren environments that cause chronic stress. Stress is compounded by the invasive procedures that many are subjected to, and studies have shown that painkiller use also remains far below what it should be in this sector. Millions of animals are also used in entertainment, in industries such as horse racing, greyhound racing, zoos, rodeos, etc. Many of these animals suffer too, from chronic stress due to confinement within restricted environments, or from training regimes and stress and injuries during events. Even our companion animals are neglected. Within the United Kingdom, the welfare of the nation's pets is studied annually in the PDSA Animal Wellbeing Report. Millions of our dogs are walked only once a day or not at all. Nearly a quarter of dogs and 40% of cats do not receive regular vaccination boosters. Social isolation is common even among social species, such as rabbits, guinea pigs, and horses. Around half of all rabbits live alone. Inappropriate diets, lack of exercise, or environmental enrichment are unfortunately all too common. And all of this in a nation that has repeatedly claimed it leads the world in animal welfare. What about wild animals? Surely they at least have some freedom from human exploitation. However, since I was born in 1970, humanity has wiped out 60% of our animal populations of mammals, birds, fish and reptiles. Extinction rates overall are at least 1,000 times historical background rates due to the vast and growing consumption of food and other resources by humanity. Said Mike Barrett, the Executive Director of Science and Conservation at Worldwide Fund for Nature, when commenting on one of his reports, "We are sleepwalking toward the edge of a cliff. If there was a 60% decline in the human population, that would be equivalent to emptying North America, South America, Africa, Europe, China, and Oceania. That is the scale of what we have done." How much does all of this matter morally? Well, that depends on what value we afford to living creatures. So, how much should we value living creatures? Let's step back for a moment and place life into context. If you think about it, the universe is almost entirely empty. It is unimaginably vast and virtually silent. Very rarely is that emptiness broken by dust, stars, or planets. Rarer still are planets that could support life, and to our knowledge the incredible complexity of living creatures exists only on our own planet. This should fill us with a sense of wonder, deep appreciation, and the desire to conserve our planetary life support systems and the incredible diversity of living creatures they support. We are starting to value animals more. Recent years have seen a rapid evolution in their social status. Cognitive and behavioural studies have revealed previously unknown characteristics in many species, such as the existence of cultural behaviour and knowledge, i.e. transmitted between and within animal societies, proto-language and other communicative abilities, and advanced social relationships with animals showing evidence of manipulative, altruistic and other complex behaviours and mental capacities. Examples include primates, corvids, parrots, dolphins and other cetaceans. Even goldfish and bats have been observed demonstrating altruistic behaviour, helping others at personal cost to themselves. The more we look, the more we seem to find. It increasingly appears that the differences in morally relevant characteristics between humans and animals, which are usually used as a basis for denying rights to animals, are in fact only differences of degree rather than fundamental differences of kind. Our awakening awareness of the richness and diversity of morally relevant characteristics within various animal species has led to a reconsideration of their historical and contemporary exclusion from the circle of moral consideration. It does matter morally how we treat other animals. The widespread existence of morally relevant characteristics in other animals provides a strong basis for affording them legal and moral rights. If we fail to value the remarkable characteristics of other animals, this often says more about deficiencies within ourselves rather than within those animals. If we won't value the richness and complexity of other animals and the lives they create, what will we value? Should we value money? Money is paper, or increasingly plastic, or inanimate metal, or electrons. Should we value big houses? These are bricks and mortar. Should we value art on the wall of those houses? For example, art depicting animals and nature. But even the best art is a pale representation of the virtually infinite depth and complexity of nature itself. I was once an activist in Western Australia, participating in protests to save our old-growth forests from being logged. We had some of the most magnificent old-growth forests in the world, soaring as high as 90 metres into the canopy. Our jarrah, marri and karri trees were second only to the Californian redwoods in height and supported entire ecosystems. And yet we were cutting down one of the wonders of the biological world and shipping them to Japan, where they were turned into wood chips, toilet paper and other products, which we then purchased back at greatly increased costs. Our widespread destruction of other species is similarly tragic and short-sighted. The result of all of this destruction is that we are currently living through the 6th mass extinction event since fossil records began. These are short periods of time during which around 3/4 of all living species become extinct. It's hard to conceive any greater tragedy than the wholesale destruction of the other living creatures with whom we share a planet. And this is compounded by the fact that it's very much a tragedy of our own making. And so I would ask all of us to change. We've clearly heard from the climate scientists that continuing with business as usual is not an option if we are to avoid the catastrophic consequences of climate change and biodiversity loss. We need to urgently transform our societies and to wean ourselves off fossil fuels. We need to cycle more and to use hybrid and electric cars or work from home and attend meetings virtually wherever possible. We need to learn to travel without flying. We need to conserve energy used within our homes. And we also need to change our diets and lifestyles. We need to end our wholesale consumption of animal products, including meat, dairy, and eggs. Fully 1/3 of greenhouse gases comes from the food system, and 20% comes from the livestock sector. 2/3 of the Earth's ice-free land surface is used for agriculture, and the livestock sector consumes 80% of that. And yet that 80% of land produces only 18% of the calories and 37% of the protein that we eat. Plant-based lifestyles are vastly less consumptive of land, water, fossil fuels, pesticides and fertilizers, and produce far less greenhouse gases. We actually produce enough food already to feed 2 planets, double the population of the Earth. But if humanity were all to adopt the animal-rich dietary choices of wealthy, westernized countries, we would require 7 planets to feed everyone. That is why the poorest people today are hungry. That's 1 in every 9 people on the planet, or nearly 1 billion people. The opportunities to help bring about the transition to a more sustainable, humane and fairer world will be different for all of us. But if we're to have any chance of avoiding the impending planetary catastrophe caused by climate change and biodiversity loss, then we all need to do what we can. What is most needed is cultural change. We need to do more than change individually and even to change our families and friends. We actually need to transition our entire societies. Achieving cultural change is all about providing positive examples and communication. And so I ask all of you to please not stay silent. Please be a positive example and help to disseminate information about the other animals with whom we're privileged to share our planet and about why their lives matter. Thank you.